This is a special feature now. It's the second and the last episode of our special report on the cancer crisis in Kenya that first aired last night. Tonight, we take a look at the steep journey of getting treatment for this leading killer disease. Experts say that the most common forms of treatment are radiotherapy and chemotherapy, but they only work well if the disease is discovered early. Nimrod Taabu now reports on the hope of treatment in the midst of despair in part 2 of Cancer Country.
Unasikia uchungu mbaya sana.
Anatuambia kama hatumpeleki hospitali tuache akufe.
My dad amepass. Huyu ni my mom naye. Nikamwambia Mungu tusaidie.
So na umangwa ni kama kutoka west mwili yote. Uchungu inaye. Okay.
For many years, the Kenyatta National Hospital has remained the only public facility properly equipped with a cancer treatment center. Private hospitals have only recently begun providing treatment for this deadly disease. But the cost of accessing cancer treatment in these private facilities means spending 3 or 4 times more the amount of money that a cancer patient would spend at Kenyatta National Hospital.
An oncologist most of the time comes into the care of the patient a bit late, especially if this patient comes from the rural areas. There's a lot of navigation, a lot of red tapes that the patient has to go through before actually they are confirmed to have cancer. And this will lead to delay in diagnosis, delay in intervention. And if we look at the current national cancer statistics, the WHO estimates over 47,000 new cancer cases every year, and we are losing over 32,000 every year. And this just tells you that majority of our patients are coming late, not because of their making, but because of the system that they have to navigate through.
The KNH Cancer Treatment Center was established as a research unit in 1968 when the country's population was only 12 million. Until recently, it was the only public comprehensive cancer treatment center. Inside this storage room, there are millions of files with records of cancer patients since the early 70s. It is still being used to store records of new cases. One would expect that by now these records would be digitally stored. Once a patient has collected his or her file, he or she would be directed here at the consultation room, the same one that was used by the early oncologists when the cancer center was established.
Our health records need to be electronic, they need to be well synchronized. Even, like in the US, the computer can pick up that you've come to hospital 3 times with the same problem, and it will prompt the system to take action because you cannot just be treated for the same illness over and over again.
From here, the patients are referred to the treatment centers, and these are the chemotherapy rooms and the radiotherapy rooms. Currently, the hospital receives between 50 and 100 new cancer patients per week. The number of follow-up patients who are seen by oncologists at the center range from 150 to 170 per week, while patients who are placed on chemotherapy could be anywhere between 120 and 160 per week. The number of patients on radiotherapy ranges between 60 to 75 per day. There are only 30 oncologists in the whole country, and half of that number attends to cancer patients at the Kenyatta National Hospital.
What put many of them off is the cost of training, because you had to do it overseas and you don't have a sponsor. So it becomes very difficult to leave your family and try to ask your family to sponsor your training overseas.
We should be able to conduct our own research so that we find out the best way to treat our patients. Patients fly all over this globe looking for treatment overseas, and they don't know that maybe the doctors here know better how to treat cancers that are in us, and research has to be funded by the government. We are not getting any money for cancer research right now at the university unless you apply for your own private grants, and it's a whole tedious process.
Many of these oncologists also have private clinics and hospitals. Dr. Nyongesa, for instance, runs her private Texas Cancer Center, which receives referrals from other hospitals around the country, including the Kenyatta National Hospital. This means oncologists have to juggle between appointments at KNH and their private clinics and hospitals.
I've been working for the public sector for many years, and I really thought I could do something. And I think it's a wake-up call to all the doctors, all the professionals, that we don't grumble about Kenyatta. We need to support Kenyatta. And you can support Kenyatta in any way. Get out of your comfort zone and offer solution. So as Texas Cancer Center, it's a hospital that has been there for more than 8 years. And really, when I used to see patients waiting for long on the queue, I thought of how can I just bring some relief to some of the patients.
Radiotherapy usually lasts between 1 to 7 weeks. In order to relieve symptoms, one might need between a single treatment to 2 weeks of treatment.
So it is a different person.
Most people have daily treatment from Monday to Friday with a rest on weekends.
I also want to make sure that the patient is immobile when I'm treating. That is, the patient doesn't move during the treatment.
Okay. And how long is the treatment?
And the treatment will depend. It will depend on the intent of the treatment, whether it is curative or palliative. If it is aimed at cure, the patient will be exposed for a shorter time. If it is aimed at relieving pain, that's palliative. Patient will have a longer treatment time.
And avoiding the normal cells at all costs.
Some of the side effects include fatigue, skin irritation, hair loss, urinary problems, nausea, tissue inflammation, a drop in the number of white blood cells, stiffness, hormonal problems, and some patients can also be exposed to a second cancer caused by radiation.
The patient is also low, and it's also lower.
At the chemotherapy section, there are close to 120 patients receiving treatment every 3 days of the week. The efficiency of chemotherapy depends on the type of cancer and the stage. Chemotherapy sessions are agonizing for patients, and it comes with side effects. These side effects have made many patients decline to continue with chemotherapy sessions.
Sasa kemo walinipea hapa Kenyatta.
Hiyo ya tatu sasa.
Sasa hiyo ya tatu. Ilikuwa ikuwe 12, lakini nilipata 7. Mwili ikalisist kakata, sasa kwa imechomeka kabisa. Imechomeka all for mwili yote iko uchungu na sio ya nini ile ya kuchoma. Sababu ya chemotherapy ni kama acid. Sababu hata kikumalikia kwa gozi inatoa kidodo ingine. Ni mbaya.
In Likia, in the outskirts of Nanyuki town, I meet Mary Mudhoni, who has just completed a second chemotherapy cycle, which resulted in hair loss. One chemotherapy session can cost anywhere between 10,000 shillings and 30,000 shillings. With 8 to 10 sessions in one cycle, a patient can spend between 100,000 shillings to 300,000 shillings. The figure could be double at private hospitals.
Watu wengi wanakufa kwa sababu ya pesa. Unajua hiyo chemotherapy iko na bei kali. Sasa ukipata chemo 7, hiyo ya 8 unakosa pesa. Ndio naona watu wengi wanakufa.
Mary's breast cancer is at stage 3. She's yet to go for a PET scan to know whether the cancer cells have shrunk. She's dreading to visit the hospital again.
Sasa hii najua wengi wale tunakuwa tunaenda nao chemotherapy, unampigia simu wasasi wao nakwambia yule mlikuwa na yeye huko Kenyatta ameshakufa.
Many patients have given testimonies about how successful chemotherapy has been for them, and some have completely regained their health after battling the disease at an early stage. 75-year-old Teresia Migwi is one of them.
Si kupiga kwa sababu nilijua tu vile aliniambia ati nikikosa kutolewa maisha yangu haiko. Sikuona nini. Sikukataa. Nilimwambia tu nimekubali. Aliniuliza utakubali, nikamwambia ndio. Akaniambia kuja mahali. Hata hawa wako na matitibiri, mimi siwezi fikiria habari yao kwa sababu sasa si wakati ule kama msichana kama ule. Mimi sasa ni mama, hata nikivuga jaketi kama hii hakuna mtu anajua ati sina hii. Hata wewe ukiulizwa ungejua kama sina.
Samuel and Grace Wainaina have not been so lucky. They can no longer cope with the cost of chemotherapy sessions. A small shop they were given as a gift by a family friend to help them get income was recently vandalized, and they are now grappling not just with cancer but also rent arrears.
Sijaona mtu wa familia ambaye amenisupport. Sababu nilipojaribu kupiga upande wa kwao nikitafuta support, mmoja aliniuliza kuna matumaini. Sikumjibu. Nilimama tu nikasema God there is hope. Tangu siku hiyo nikasema Mungu, najua unapatiaga watu majaribu ambao hawataweza. Hii nitaweza nikiwa na wewe.
Unaona hii matibabu ya kansa hata kama tunalipiwa na ya kadi ya NHIF haiwezi kukulipia the full amount, kwa sababu every time all those 8 circles ni moja peke yake ndio ilinisimamia. Hizi zingine inakusimamia na zingine unatumwa enda nunua dawa. Alafu kuna vipimo zile ukirudi kwa daktari ni lazima uwe nazo na zina cost, kwa sababu unatolewa damu inaenda inapimwa na unakutanga moja ni 2,200, 3,500 hivyo, na ni lazima urudi nayo. Alafu ukienda kule una mahali pa kulala, lazima utafute chakula pia. Sasa ukicombine hiyo mambo yote, hata kuna wakati tulikuwa tunalala kashote kwa bench. Umefika the end, huwezi rudi.
Such is the dilemma for cancer patients. While preparing to visit several other patients in different towns, I received a call that Anyambura, the cancer patient I had visited in Dandora in the outskirts of Nairobi's CBD, is in bad shape. After doctors advised her that it was no longer wise to put her on further chemotherapy, after her 4th cycle, the disease took a toll on her. She was hospitalized for several weeks. On January 31st this year, Anne took her last breath. Her last wish was to celebrate her 37th birthday in December 2018, which she did with her family. Her burial was a somber, emotional affair for her family, friends, neighbors, and all those who knew her. Her husband and 3 children stood by her coffin as mourners comforted them with words of wisdom, describing Anne as a true cancer warrior.
Hata kama amepingana na changamoto za kila aina, lakini a smile on her face haungemkosa.
David Madenge, now a widower, says life has become more difficult. His young children currently live with their grandmother in Nyahururu as Madenge tries to eke a living hawking clothes in Dandora.
Inakaza zingine watoto wananiuliza wale wadogo, mamu wako wapi? Na ile kitu unaisikia kwa uzito. Wengine wakuuliza mamu atarudi. Sasa tu unawapa tu moyo, unawaambia unajua kuna Mungu, kuna Mungu. Sasa ile watu wanakoka wanaenda kwa Mungu, sasa tutakuta mama kwa Mungu. Unaona, understand.
Cancer is not only claiming lives, it is also acquiring new victims that a red treatment cannot cope. This is Githurai Shopping Center in the outskirts of Nairobi's Central Business District, where I met 22-year-old Ruth Wanjiku, another cancer patient. She was diagnosed with osteogenic sarcoma, which is also known as osteosarcoma, a type of bone cancer. After weeks of considering chemotherapy treatment, doctors at one of the hospitals in Nairobi informed her that she only had one choice.
Nikaenda saa kwa superintendent, unajua ni daktari mkubwa hospitali, alikuwa anaitwa Nyaga. Nyaga akaniambia sasa Ruth, hakuna option. Nikisoma hii kitu inaonekana imeguza bone, na ukikaa na hii mguu itaingia kwa bone marrow ama itaku affect part zingine. Na sasa tunataka tufanye hii kitu as soon as possible. Sasa hiyo ni match. Nikamwambia daktari, hebu niende nifikirie. Akaniambia ukienda ufikirie, it will cost you nothing na nitakukata mguu free of charge.
She traveled home to inform her family before returning to hospital. On the day of her surgery, Ruth woke up from her hospital bed feeling lost and hopeless. She stared at her left leg for the very last time before heading into the theater room.
Hiyo siku sitakagi kuikumbuka juu nakumbuka nilienda kuamka kutoka kwa kitanda ya hosi. Nikaenda kukanyangisha miguu yangu so sijui kwenye niko ndo niende choo. Nikajipata sina mguu. Nikaanguka. Hapo nasa akakuja. Niko na bandage. Hiyo mguu imefura inatosha na hivi. Daktari akaniambia, daktari akarasha akakuja akanichukua akanirudisha kwa kitanda akaniambia kwani kupokea ulikatwa mguu. So mimi nilikuwa nasikia kama niko nayo cause nilikuwa tunasikia iko na nataka kuikanyangisha chini.
In the weeks that followed, Ruth required physiotherapy and also began learning to live life again with one leg. She was eager to walk again, but she was not prepared for the stigma associated with her disability.
Upatane na mtoto aseme mam, huyu hana mguu. Huyo ni mtoto, mamake baada hata amwambie sema pole ama nini, wataenda tu, you know. Upatane na watu wazima. Mtu hata kama alikuwa anaenda hii direction na mimi naenda ingine, atasimama akuangalie. Enda kwa mat. Kama siku nyingine nilipanda mat za umoja. Nikakuwa penye nilikuwa nataka kushukishiwa, hawangeshukisha juu ya kanjo. So nikamwambia driver, aki nishukishe tu nitaongea na ukanjo, juu kwenye utaenda kunishukishia nitawalk sana. Driver aliniambia usiwahi ingia kwa hii gari kiwete.
In 2017, Ruth suffered a major setback just as she celebrated her 20th birthday.
So unajua birthday unamwagiliwa ngwa maji. Mimi vile nilimwagiliwa maji, nilisikia kifua yangu yote ni kama ime freeze. Siwezi hadi fanya hivi.
After days of taking painkillers, she decided to go for a checkup.
Kuna kansa ya lung. Na to make the matter worse, haijakula lung nusu, imekula lung yote. Imagine, ukisai uambiwe kuna kansa ya lung. You can, I don't know, cause ujue mtu akiambiwa na kansa anaonanga, it's death.
Cancer had once again reared its ugly head on her young, energetic body. Lung cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and claims more lives each year than colon, prostate, ovarian and breast cancers combined. Ruth's life simply turned upside down. The initial cost of the treatment was 150,000 shillings.
Nikaambiwa, before you start chemotherapy, enda upigwe ile ya heart, ile picha ya heart. So nikaenda huko kwa heart, nikaangaliwa. So you know the way they do this and wana echo, inaitwa echo. So nikafanyiwa echo ya heart. Wow, thinking that ati kila kitu iko poa. Nikarudi tu kufanywa, nikaambiwa zitatumwa kwa daktari. So nilirudi nikuja nianzi wangu chemotherapy before the results zitumwe. Kukuja nikawekwa shindano, yani kanyura, ndo nianze kuwekwa maji ndo niwekwe shindano. Niliona daktari amekama akaniambia, you know what? You have a tumor on your heart.
With no employment and relatives to seek assistance from, her hospital bill stood at 2 million shillings. The hospital administration was compassionate with her and allowed her to pay her hospital bill in installments. She has, however, decided not to seek further tests or scans that would enable her to know whether the cancer cells still exist in her body or not. It is a decision that many cancer survivors have taken, and you can imagine why. This is Paradox at his hospital bed. This 10-year-old boy broke his right leg while playing.
Anajua ndugu yake akamwambia guu chungu, anajua hafai kufika karibu na yeye, so he understands.
His mother, Nancy Atieno, has watched as her son's ailment evolved from a sports injury to full-blown bone cancer.
Kuaccept ati alikuwa na hiyo ugonjwa ilikuwa ngumu, so nilichukua muda kumpeleka hospitali ndio apate matibabu.
Kwa nini ilichukua muda?
Zile treatment plan nilipewa singeweza si vitu zingekuwa rahisi kuaccept.
Nancy hesitated to start him on chemotherapy treatment and instead sought a second opinion from the relatives. Some suggested to her that modern cancer treatment is dangerous.
Niliambiwa anafaa afanye chemo, na vile tunavyojua chemo iko na side effects zile mbaya. Then secondly ilikuwa ni amputation, kumaanisha anaenda kupoteza mguu, hiyo mguu, which to me was not easy.
May 2019, doctors recommended amputation to save Paradox's life.
Nikimwambia unajua sasa daktari ashamuona enda kukata on Friday, kumaanisha ni kesho peke yake. How do you feel? Aliambia mam, wacha wakuja wanikate hata saa hii. Cause juu ya ile uchungu wako nayo. Mwenyewe utamuona, hiyo mguu imefika ile point yenye hata kama ni kukata is the best decision.
Paradox walked out of the hospital on crutches, his life having been changed by a disease that almost took away his life. Doctors have, however, advised that he starts chemotherapy immediately in order to ensure that the cancer cells do not spread.
I would say it was okay. I can't really complain.
It will be months before he can go to school again.